Alright, so now we're in Houdini. First of all, we're going to create some very simple fog, which we can put into our Clarice 3D scene in order to give a little bit more depth and a little bit more life to the current fog setup that we have, which is mostly composed of 2D at the minute, and we're going to include some 3D just to round it out. And with a mix of techniques, I think we will be able to achieve a good look, sort of a combination of the best of both worlds. So, in Houdini, I personally like to work in the technical mode instead of the build, because I find that it's a slightly better layout and a better presentation of the information. You can do whatever, and I'm not a master of Houdini, and this isn't a Houdini tutorial that is going to be in-depth. I'll just assume that you know some basics, and we'll teach some very simple techniques for the creation of this fog. So first of all, let's just click into our scene here, and let's type in Geo, and we're just going to create a geometry node. And if we double click it, we can jump in. And in here, we can now create our setup for the fog. So let's again click Tab, and we're just going to type in sphere. Okay. And let's change this to polygon. And we're gonna up the frequency a little bit. And let's distort this by using a mountain SOP. And what this does is it basically multiplies the positions of your points using a noise, and we get this sort of distorted ball. And we want it to be even more distorted. If you think of fog clouds floating through a city, they're going to be pretty uneven, and so let's push this quite far. Okay, maybe around this much. Alright, so let's follow this up by creating a cloud node, and we'll just create it here and connect our mountain to the cloud. And so now we can see we have something that looks like the beginnings of a cloud. So one thing though is that this is not the best way to look at it, because our background is quite bright and our cloud is quite bright, so it would be better to work on a dark background. So if we click D over our viewport and go to the background, and let's just change the color scheme to dark, and let's save as default. Okay, so now we have this, and let's go into the cloud node, and here what we can do is we can increase the resolution of our cloud, and we can also go into the density, and we can multiply the density to be smaller or higher. Let's just stick with something like this for now, maybe a little bit higher. And let's go into the scatter shapes tab, and what we're going to do is we're going to fill source, and what this does is it scatters these spheres around your current cloud setup. So if we click to visualize as polygons, we can sort of see what is going on here. So it's quite a random shape, but that is what we want. It doesn't have to be perfect in any way, and it's going to be quite transparent in our scene. So I think we can get away with quite a lot. But let's play around with these settings a little bit anyway. What we can do, of course, is change our random seed and get an entirely different cloud. So you can generate a lot of different clouds very quickly and very easily this way, because then based on this, the rest of our setup is going to change as well. So we can reduce the scale of these scattered balls as well, to be smaller or to be larger. So, oops. Okay, so I made it quite a bit too big, and now I've just got a huge ball. So let's reduce this to the original, which was 0.2. And let's have a look. Maybe let's reduce it slightly more. I think this is slightly better. Maybe, let's see, if we middle mouse click on here, we can change this scale very slightly. Let's see. Okay, maybe that size. So what we can do is, if we are creating a larger cloud, we can add extra detail to it by scrolling down and adding secondary shapes. And if we up the iteration slightly, you can see that we are now getting these extra little bits. Let me just click to visualize as polygons. So we're getting these additional secondary shapes scattered on top of our main shape, and if you have a huge cloud, it helps to have this little detail to really sell it. And of course you can play around with those details as well. But for our fog, it's really unnecessary. There is really no point in going into that much detail. Otherwise, you can also choose to flatten your cloud in order to kind of make it appear bigger as well. If you kind of zoom out, you have these bottom, flat bottom, I guess, thunder clouds, which is really cool. But again, for now there's no need. What we are going to do next is create a cloud noise. And let's just have a look. Let's maybe increase the amplitude so it looks much more smoky this way, as we can see. Maybe 0.5. Okay. And by, say, reducing octaves, we get a simpler shape. And by increasing them, we get something much more complicated, but let's just settle for maybe 2, I think. That's good enough. Let's look at roughness maybe. Okay. And this also has more settings, of course. There's advection, which you can sort of use to add additional noise, or I guess detail. A great way to see what something is doing in your parameters is, for example, hover over a title of something, and you get a little description of what it does. So, additional noise offset to the main noise to create finer details. So, that's quite cool. Maybe let's have a look at increasing the amplitude a little bit. Okay. I think that really helps. So we can either go with this as it is, or we can make it a little bit more random by just multiplying maybe the density with a little bit of noise. So let's have a look at creating a volume WOP. And if you just view this and dive in, what we can do is we can take the existing attributes here and we can modify them so that they have changes applied to them individually. So for example, what we can do is create a multiply, and this will multiply the values of whatever is plugged into it together, and we can take the product and plug it into our density as the new density instead of the old one. So what we're going to do is we are going to plug this in as input number 1, and we are going to create an AA noise. If we just type in AA noise, we get anti-alias noise. And let's plug this in. And here into the position, let's plug in the position of our original object. And let's plug the noise into input 2. And now let's plug the product into the density here. So now we're getting something, but it is very, very faint. So instead what we're going to do is take our amplitude and let's just ramp it up to 10. And now we're getting kind of a cool result. You know, this looks like stray fog hanging around a city. And the cool thing about this for us is that we can use this by just rotating it and placing it at different angles. It looks like a completely different bit of fog. So this will be really cool to just add some 3D interaction for all of our mist in the scene to just make it slightly more realistic. And feel free to play around with the settings here. For example, we can take the density from our original, and we could even plug it into, say, the offset here, and get a different result, because now this noise is offset by the density of the original object. Or we could plug it into the roughness and get slightly different results. But I think for now, let's just stick with this. And what we're going to do is import it back into Clarice. So let's just right click on our volume WAP here, and let's go to Save as Geometry and navigate to our folder and Project. And I have my fog VDB, and we'll just save it as fog1.vdb and click accept to save it. Alright, so now that we have that, let's jump back into Clarice and add our fog into our setup there and make it work with what we have. And we're back in Clarice. So what we are going to do now is create a new render layer first. And let's just grab our DMP haze layer and let's duplicate it. And we're instead going to call this DMP VDB fog. And let's enable it. And okay, so what we want to do next is go to our fog geometry folder under Geo, and let's go to File, Import Volume, and we're going to go to our project, Fog VDB, and just select our fog 1, and let's find it here in the 3D view, and let's just bring it down. Okay, so it comes in as this strange looking thing, but all we have to do is position it, and let's find a good spot here. Okay, just for now. And here in the VDB fog, let's follow the path to our geometry all group, and we're just going to duplicate it. And here, let's add another rule, and it's simply going to be a path that is within our fog context, and I'm just going to create a new context called VDB and just drop our fog 1 into it and grab this address, paste it here, /* and apply. Okay. And let's change the geometries to Geo All Group 1. I haven't renamed it. Let me just rename it Geo All Fog. Okay. And the lights, instead of having one of these, let's just have all of the lights illuminating this fog. And next up, let's have a look at our shading layer, which we'll still keep using the same one from the haze and the rolling mist. So we have fog's shading layer. And here I've already got the filter typed in, so fog VDB and everything inside it. And for that, we are going to apply a new material. And let's just create it here. We're going to create a new material, physical volume, and let's plug that in. Okay, so now we are getting something that actually looks like some fog. Let's just render this individually. And what we can do if we think that this is a little bit too thick of a fog cloud, we can just go into our volume shader and scroll down to our density multiplier, and we can reduce this. So let's say 50%. Okay, so we have something that is a little bit more transparent, but I think we could go even lower. I want this to be a very subtle effect, so let's go to maybe 10%. Okay. Yeah, let's just go with that. I like the detail we're getting, and we're getting a variety of shapes, and as the camera flies past this, it will give a little bit of extra depth to our shot. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this VDB. Let's just focus in here. And perhaps let's have this positioned in the corner, maybe. Okay, let's look through the camera here as well. Okay, quickly let's, in our fog, shading layer, let's change the airships to red matte. Alright, and let's just go to our Geo All Fog group. And here we're just going to also include our airships, just for now. Okay, just so we can see exactly where these airships are, because I kind of maybe want to achieve an effect where this front one comes out of the shot and through the fog. So let's just have this pulled back to whenever it's coming through here. And again, this is not going to be a very obvious effect, quite subtle, but could be cool. Let's make this bigger. Oh, whoops, I'm moving my render camera. Let's not do that. That's more like it. Don't make this mistake, kids. Okay. So let's just put this maybe here. And let's make it a little bit bigger. Alright, and what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate this and just localize the translation, the rotation, and the scale. And let's maybe put it near the bottom. We can expand this and rotate it a bit. And let's copy and paste this instance. And let's put another copy of it here. And of course, all of the fog we did previously in 2D, if you want, you can do it all in 3D using this method, and it will look better than what we had. It'll just take more time to render, and it's a little bit more time consuming, but the results will definitely be great. So if you have the time to do that, by all means you should. I'm just trying to save on time in order to make this as efficient a project as I can, and also show off a variety of techniques so you guys can really decide how and why you want to do things certain ways. Just to give you that freedom whenever you're working on your own projects. So this is the fog we have here, and I'm kind of just wanting the shot to be coming out through the fog, so we kind of have the city revealed to us out of this fog. Even though it's a very short shot, only 50 frames, it's still a little cool effect that I think will add a little bit to our shot. So just to finish this off, let's go back to our fog shading layer, and let's just change the airships back to black. And we're good. Alright, so now we have our VDB fog. Next, let's jump onto creating some 3D cables, again using a mix of Clarice and Houdini.